Coming back to today. So for today's event, I'm personally delighted to welcome the wonderful Karina Stewart, who I can't believe now I have known for over 15 years and I have personally learned a great deal from. Karina is the co-founder and chief wellness director of the very unique and iconic Kamalaya Wellness Sanctuary in Thailand. Some of you may have heard about Kamalaya. Some of you may even have been to Kamalaya, but if you haven't, it really is a life-changing retreat and a place to go if you're really serious about your well-being. So I would say it's one of the top in the world. And a little personal story on my end. So many years ago, some of you may already have heard me say this, but I always tell people about it because it was such a powerful experience for me. But many years ago, I was kind of soldiering through my own issues, which I had. I had gone through miscarriages and relationship issues, and I really wasn't looking after myself very well. And I went to Kamalaya, and it was a real life changer for me. They kind of pulled me apart and then put me back together, and I felt I could release all the old traumas and all the stuff that I had been dealing with, and start to live a healthier lifestyle in a kind of more sustainable way. And so Kamalaya is very, very close to my heart. And so is John and Karina Stewart, who are the founders and have real integrity and authenticity. And Kamalaya was the inspiration and brains behind the wellness concept from the very beginning, and has overseen it since. So Karina, I should say. Karina was the inspiration and brains of Kamalaya. Karina, welcome.
Thank
really
you.
Lovely to have you from sunny Thailand.
Yes.
I guess it's a bit late for you now, right? So you're not out in the sun. Not too bad. Okay.
No, not too bad. It's 4 p.m., so we're okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
The sun hasn't set yet.
Oh, well, it's just so lovely to have you here. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Stella.
Before we start the session, can you share a little bit about yourself? I mean, your bio is on the site, so people can read that and all your qualifications and all the great things that you've done kind of academically. And but just tell us in a nutshell why you started Kamalaya, you and John. What was all that about?
I think, really there's two beginnings to this story. My personal journey, and then I'll share John's and my journey together. But briefly, from the time that I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And that remained with me right up until the time I was in university. I cared deeply about understanding human beings and what made them tick. And I wanted to be involved in helping, in supporting, and in the medical field in some way. By the time I got to university, through my mother, I had been exposed to complementary and alternative medical systems, such as homeopathy and naturopathy, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wasn't keen at that point in embarking on a 8, 10, 12-year journey to become a full-fledged psychiatrist and pretty much prescribe drugs, or another kind of physician and do surgery on drugs. So I put that by the side, but I maintained an interest in healing and in understanding the psyche and the emotions of humans, and then also their health and how to help them. And in my mid-20s, I met a Taoist Chinese master, and I spent a day with him, and who he was as a person profoundly impacted me. And by the end of the day, I think I was 24. I just couldn't figure out what it was about him that was so extraordinary. But I knew I was in the presence of someone unusual. His mind was lucid beyond belief. It turns out he was in his 70s. His body moved like a young tiger. There was something remarkable, and I could sense it. I could experience it, but I didn't know what it was. So I blurted out by the end of the afternoon, "Is it your diet? What is it about you? Is it your diet?" And to which he responded, "Read my books." And it turns out he was this amazing Taoist master who had over 20 books in English and more than 50 in Mandarin. And I was fortunate then to then go and study traditional Chinese medicine. So that's one branch of the story. A separate branch is that John also, from a very young age, had the deep desire to be of service. He had himself ordained as a little 12-year-old, as can you imagine, as a minister, not a priest, but a minister, or someone who could spiritually counsel. And he
He
embarked
had
on
himself ordained. I didn't know that. That's fantastic. I love
yeah,
it.
12, at 12. Yeah. And then he found his way at 23 in a beautiful journey that I hope this year he's going to start to actually write and document. He ended up in the Himalayas at the feet as a student, devoted student of a great Himalayan yogi master, and dedicated the next almost, I think it was 16, 17 years to learning this deep spiritual tradition, this philosophical tradition of the Himalayas, and building, schools and clinics and one major hospital in the region that services an enormous region that didn't have any medical care, and living that life. And in 1982, our paths crossed. I had been inducted into meditation at the age of 14 by my mother and her journey. And by 21, I took a sabbatical year from university in order to study with this particular teacher. And lo and behold, John and I met. He remembers the first meeting earlier than I do, but he knew right away that he wanted to have a life partner with me. I didn't know, but I remember him. And every letter we exchanged, every gift we exchanged, I kept for years and years. I still have them, right? So I didn't know I felt the way he did, but somehow my behavior reflected that he was extremely important. And we became very close friends, not a relationship. Until at 40, he left the Himalayas and I was getting my master's degree in Chinese medicine. And he came and we became a couple. And this is where the the sperm and the egg met because he literally I think it was we weren't even on our honeymoon. It was sort of like our exploratory first journey together. We were in the Yucatan in Mexico, and he asked me, would you like to one day create a place where all of your background in healing and the medical field of traditional Chinese medicine and yoga and meditation and all these things, and my background in the philosophical and spiritual traditions of the Himalayas, where we could bring this healing and spirituality together and people could come and partake? And my answer was, as long as it's not an ashram. That was it just rolled up. And I've often wondered why that was my first response, but I think for me, it was important that it be an open system where people could come and explore what was the right way for them. I wanted to approach it that we don't have answers, but we can create an environment where people can discover for themselves what are their answers. But in any case, we both laughed when I said that, and he said, no, definitely not a community like that. And then I said, then yes, 100%. And so from the beginning of our marriage, it was always in the back burner. And we would come back to what would it have, what wouldn't it have, what were the important things. And they weren't the concrete things, Stella. They were the invisible things. What kinds of principles, such as we're not going to create a place where we tell you what the truth is and what the path is, and this is the way. There's nothing wrong with that approach at all. I think it's a very valid approach in many, many fields, but that was not what we were setting out to do. I didn't feel that that's where we should be coming from. So yeah, that happened. And then in 94, and then in 2000, we put the down payment on the piece of land that has become Kamalaya.
Wow. I actually remember when you when I heard about this brand new place, and this lovely young Chinese medical doctor who had put together this fantastic detox protocol. It actually feels like yesterday, but anyway, that's a different story, another conversation.
But it's a beautiful story because we embarked. You started Wellbeing Escaped right at the time we started, and there was this immediate resonance from the
Yeah.
beginning, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was beautiful. And I think what really attracted me to what you were doing from very early on is that you held people on an emotional level as well as you know, from a physical level, because there were loads of spas, and there still are, that are very kind of medical and focus on physical detoxes and you know, all the protocols around that. But what happens when people come and do a physical detox and then they kind of fall apart when they're there? Who's there to pick them up and hold them and really look after them? And that's what I think you got very early on. And you were one of the first to do that, if not the first, at Kamalaya. So that really separated you from the rest. And I think everyone's been playing catch up with you since then. So it's a nice thing. But let's come to our subject today, which is about resilience, and discuss that, because it's a big one. And I guess you have had to, I mean, we've all had to deal with it, our own, you know, resilience reserves. We've had to dig deep, but I think you in particular have had to do that a lot, you and John. Tell us a little bit about your own issues and what you've been through the last year.
Yeah. Well, there have been a couple of things that have really drawn our resources for both of us. I think I'll start with sort of from the outside and then pull it in. But for people who may not know, Thailand ended up closing its borders very, very early on, unlike the UK, which I think didn't really start closing its borders or even filtering until May last year, right? And then on and off. Thailand shut its borders, and they stayed shut absolutely for 8 months. And which of course is if you're in the hospitality industry and your business is dependent on foreigners, which ours has been from the beginning, was incredibly difficult and devastating. We managed to stay open through that whole time because we had guests that had checked in and they kept extending. They didn't want to go back to Europe, which was our good fortune. But of course, the numbers of guests, etc., have been minimal. We have been blessed that we have had an incredible team, the vast majority of who really have been, as a family, pulling together and within each person's capacity, doing everything they could to sort of work together, collaborate, give and take. I call it bending and weaving, accommodating one another, because we're one of the few properties and that has remained open on Koh Samui through the entire time. And so that's one level. And part of the difficulty was that on March 1st, I flew from Thailand with two older ladies in their 80s, my mother and her best friend, because I had promised I would take them back to the States when they spent the winter with me. And I tried to dissuade my mother and say, no, really, things are happening. We should delay this. And she just, she's a strong woman. And God bless her. You know, I mean, she wouldn't have survived the things she's had to go through. And with us, so she was a single mom with three daughters at a certain point when I was little. So, but it was not the wisest choice. But I went with it and I took her back. And if you all remember, that March is when the world exploded. And it was just like country by country by country that in Europe started exploding. The US went nuts. So I was supposed to stay until March 30th and then return on my own. But as I saw things happening, John and I decided, no, bring my mom back with me and get back as quickly as possible. And within that, I could only pressure her so much. I could only move as quickly as I could. But anyway, boom, we left March 20th. So a full 10 days before I had planned to leave, and with my mom. And we land. So it's from Arizona. So it's a really long flight with a connection in LA, a connection through Hong Kong or Tokyo, and then Bangkok. And the day we landed, which was March 22nd, because you lose 14 hours, that day, the Thai government declared a state of emergency and wouldn't allow us to enter the country. And so I'm at the airport with my mom in a wheelchair, 80 something. We've just gone through this extremely grueling journey and also very high risk because I mean, we didn't have hazmat suits. We had a mask, disinfectant, and gloves, and so it was nerve wracking. And we're in the airport, 12 hours at the Bangkok airport, and they would not allow us. I had doctors' letters, notarized letters, etc., and it didn't matter. And everyone, um, our lawyers, shareholders who have very good connections, tried, and they wouldn't let us in. So after 12 hours, we then got on the last flight with a couple of seats. Literally, they said, if you're here past midnight, we don't know where. I mean, they may put you in military quarantine, which is what they were doing with people. And I couldn't. I mean, that was going to risk my mother's health for sure. So I said, okay, we have to go back. We transited through Tokyo for 20 hours as I watched every single flight in 20 hours get canceled, except for two flights, Stella. One to Los Angeles, where we were headed, and one to Toronto, Canada. 20 hours of flights just were scheduled canceled. So my heart was in my throat for 20 hours as I wondered if we get stranded in Tokyo, what then? Because I would have panicked. And fortunately, we made it to LA, spent the night at a hotel. I've never cleaned things so thoroughly. You can't, I mean, I should have videoed myself. It was really funny, but and then we landed home. Now, on the surface, it's really, I mean, it was a very stressful journey on every level, on every front, and that's the truth. There's no denying that. Simultaneously, some beautiful, beautiful things happened during that journey. And one of them was that I'm the eldest of three daughters. And for the first time, my mother, who is really a dynamo and a healer and an amazing, extraordinary woman, um, was able to surrender and accept that I could look after her, that I was a grown woman, that I was very capable, and that actually there was no other way we were going to get through this. She could not try to control from the wheelchair on this very difficult journey. And that was established early on without it being combative or a force. I just sort of became very quiet and very still and drew on my training to become very, very quiet so that she could realize without my having to disempower her in a way or make her feel hurt by it. And so she passed the mantle. And for those of you who are daughters of strong mothers, you know how what that is. So from that point forward, she and I, on a moment to moment basis, had a fantastic journey. Like fantastic. Like if we were going on the best holiday of our lives, she was enjoying. They were serving food, and it was a Japanese airline, and they had, all the attention to details, and we were in business class, and I just kept noticing the beautiful, wonderful things along the way, even though there was this other big shadow to the whole
Sure.
journey. So it was a gift. Both of us emerged from that feeling that it had been an initiation, and that we had passed with flying colors, and that it had exhausted our physical bodies, but that internally we had been resourced and renewed.
Amazing.
So, yes.
Amazing. And I think and then I know that you were apart from your husband for a long time until you could get back into Thailand. So, I mean, you've been through a hell of a lot over the last year, not just from the business perspective, but from being separate to your life partner. It's been tough for you. So you've had to draw from your own reserves, your resilience reserves. And it's just, it's interesting. I have had something similar, not as extreme, but just listening to you, you're looking for the good and the beauty in the moment to get you through that time. But let's talk about what resilience is like a buzzword that people use in business mainly, like, okay, oh, that company is really resilient because they pivoted, and you hear that a lot, and it's not, it's more, I maybe that's my interpretation of it, because that's how I hear that word used a lot. But how do you interpret resilience? What is your personal definition of resilience?
I think, when I think of resilience, I think of the ability and the resources to adapt to difficult circumstances, stressful circumstances, to adversity. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't, by the time they're even 30 or 40, certainly by 50, we've all experienced true adversity, of some sort or another. And for me, resilience is the resources and the capacity to adapt and to engage or work with those circumstances that are very difficult in such a way, and it may take as long as it takes. There's the timing on that is very personal, but in such a way that we grow with it and from it, and we're not annihilated. You can be annihilated in your physical health. You can be annihilated in your mental balance. You can be, right? When I use that word, I really mean sort of left really marred and not as whole as you felt before that circumstance. So to me, resilience is about meeting these difficult times that come in life. I mean, I am I don't know if I'm a optimistic person. I think I'm a resilient person. I think I'm a realist. And I think I'm a realist because I have resources to meet the difficulties. And so to me, it's like being rubbery, but not Teflon. Not that things brush off, not that we negate the negative things that happen, the very powerfully difficult things that do happen in life, but that we can draw on resources, both outer and inner, to meet those situations in a way that facilitates or supports, even if it's very, very slowly, growth and evolution and a flowering again, even though whatever might have happened might still be with us for our whole life. I think there are certain things that stay with us our whole life, and I don't have to name them. We all know.
But
so
then they don't. Those things, I guess, it's making sure those things don't define us, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
become our blueprint, so to speak, of how we move forward with our lives. And it's a really interesting subject, because some people seem to be, and Victoria has asked this question, it's a good question. Is it something that can be taught, or is it inherent? Some people seem to be more resilient than others. Some people seem to be that they can deal with stuff in a better way. Not even better is the wrong word, but in a more robust way, let's say, than others. So what's your view on that? Is it, across the years, I mean, you've seen so many people coming in and out of Kamalaya, and then your patients and everything else. Yes. Is that some people that have that just kind of inherently there, or is it something they learn?
I don't know too much about the core biology being inherent, but what I do know is that even in diseases that, illnesses that we say are genetic, actually a very small percentage are truly genetic, which means that they're going to manifest and express, like hemophilia, no matter what you do, no matter how you eat, no matter what environment you're in. There are very few that are fully, truly genetically predetermined, right? Very few. Most, even genetic physical diseases, are impacted and turned on and off. Our genes can be turned on and off.
Oh, I've lost you. Hang on.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You just, you are in Thailand after all. You just, no. You just got to, the genes are turned on and off. That's where you got to.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. By lifestyle, by choices, right? So we know that, and that's physical health. So resilience, from what I've learned, from what I've studied, it is definitely something that can be learned. Having said that, I do think our early life circumstances, as we know, they have an impact. For example, if we have a sense of uncertainty about relationships, let's say I don't want to give examples because I don't want anyone in the audience to say, oh, wow, that's me. And then they're going to think, oh, I have less or whatever. But our early childhood experiences definitely have an impact on our sense of security in the world, and our sense of competence and our confidence and all of these things that are related and going to impact resilience. But absolutely, resilience can be learned, and it doesn't take years and years to learn it, but it does take creating habits, mental habits, emotional habits, and some physical habits. And so, since habits we are in control of, we absolutely can become more resilient. But the backdrop to that will vary for sure, for sure.
Yeah, that's
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it? Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to everyone else? Yeah, we're getting the people I can see are nodding, so that's good. So yeah, for sure, it really is. And I think from a perspective of resilience, I mean, you touched on it about optimism and realism, because I'm a natural optimist. I always have been. That doesn't always work in my favor, because sometimes I blindside myself to all the issues that are going on around. I've predicted so many times that we would be out of this lockdown by now. I can't tell you. So now I've just stopped talking about it completely because I've been wrong so many times. But that is my natural optimism,
Yes.
and that doesn't, my parents are not like that, so I don't know where I got that from. I just, I have become that way.
Yes.
Whereas my husband is very much a realist, and he shakes his head sometimes when he hears me talk about stuff. He's just, so sometimes, but I guess it's dealing with knowing, with optimism, and that's when that music I played at the beginning is my go-to sound. It's my music of like, keep your head to the sky,
Yes.
keep
Yes.
optimistic, keep your heart open. That is my view on to keep myself going, and it works for me.
Listen, I'm married to an optimist.
I know.
John is a total optimist. He's like it's Mr. Sunshine, and I
Yeah.
love it. And in my world, I resonate in that direction. But if you're trained as a doctor, you also really have to have strong footing and realism. Otherwise,
yeah, no, absolutely. But I was just going to say, like, what's your view on that? On optimism can sometimes let people down in a way. I mean, I've had my own training over the years, so I can deal with my stuff. But I think if you can, there is that danger if you're very, very optimistic of feeling let down a lot or disappointed too, right?
Yes. So Stella, I think that's a really, really good question. Like, really good question. And I'm not sure that I have an answer, but because honestly, it's a deep, deep question. We could actually talk about that question for days and days. That's a really powerful question. So I want to preface that, because anything I say is just a tiny little first pass. But what occurs to me, I'd rather say, like, what gets stimulated inside of me when you say that is, sometimes we use optimism, and please, I hope this doesn't, let me see.
No, don't worry. We've heard all kinds of things on this group over the last year.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I'm really talking like when you unpack a theme, this is like
this isn't personal, it's a theme. Yeah,
no,
sure.
The theme. It's not because of what you said about you or John, or it's just like the theme on I used to be more in that direction, right? And I think sometimes I think optimism can become a little bit like a little yellow warning light when we use it, if we use it, sometimes because we can't face the possibility of what's staring us in the face. We just can't. All of us have our limit to what we can face, really, truly. And I was confronted with my optimism in a medical situation with a friend. I'll just give you a tiny, tiny example, but someone very dear to me, like a godmother, and I just adored her. And she had something come up with her feet, and they went, just some symptoms that were bizarre, and they checked it out, and she said, blah, 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 blah. And then she said, and they have this little chronic cough, and they want me to come back in a few weeks because of this chronic cough. And she went back, and they said, they want me to come back again, but I'm going to go to Houston where my son is and get it checked out in the hospital there. But I'll be back in, no time, because she and I were writing a book together. And she said, I'll be back. It's fine. And when she went there and they did the biopsy, and she said, I can't talk on the phone because it hurts and it makes me start coughing. And in a week, she was dead. Okay, in a week, she was dead. And even though she said they did a biopsy and she gave me little hints that this was more serious, I couldn't possibly face that really this could be something very serious and terminal. And here I am, someone trained in the medical field in Chinese medicine, but I couldn't. And I asked my mom, could you see that I was avoiding? And she said, absolutely. I said, did you know? She said, yes, I knew this could be. And I really was confronted with, I really had this very, very optimistic and denial. So that's when I think it can be something that can cause us hiccups, a bumpy ride.
Yeah, sure. We have to be careful it doesn't become denial.
Yes,
yeah,
but on the other
absolutely.
hand,
yeah.
But on the other hand, having a sunny outlook is helpful for resilience. When you're always looking for what's a threat and for what's wrong, although it evolved with us for survival, it's a survival mechanism. When we were out and prey amongst many, many predators, it helped us survive and we evolved for that. But now it doesn't serve us so well. So developing the ability, which I would call optimism, to see how much goes really well in a day. And we take it all for granted because we haven't been wired to notice, and to let that inform our mood and to let that inform our view as we move forward. That's a really good thing. So it depends how it's being used.
Well, you did it on the plane on the way back with your mom and the food, I mean, this is these small moments. I personally, when I'm around people who are constantly on alert, looking for threat, and I find it like really depleting. I find that very tiring, and I find it negative. They can say, well, I'm a realist, but I find that, but we're all different. And this is the thing, it's just the beauty of it. We're all very different. So how does it affect our physical health? Because we've talked about it a lot in this group over the last year. And one of my big missions is for people to understand the link between emotional, mental, and physical health. That it's not all separate, It's like that you don't manifest this physical problem, and that's just because of that or because of genetic issue or whatever. It's just so much more complex, I guess. So if we're not, if our resilience reserves are depleted, how can that manifest in us physically?
Yes. So one of the things that happens when we're not able to adapt and respond in ways that are helpful, and that's one of the really important questions to ask ourselves when we are being challenged, is what I'm doing right now helpful, or is it hurting me? Is it helping me with this situation, or is it hurting me? And that's those days, because it was 5 days door to door and we went nowhere. 5 days of going nowhere, if you can imagine. 5 days door to door. To just end up exactly where we started from, but very different from the experience. I had to, there were times when I almost, at the airport, of course, you can imagine, when I almost collapsed and wanted to, just start crying and tear my hair out, etc. And it was like, is this helpful? Or is this going to hurt me? And I knew there was that point of no return. So you have to catch it before you fall into it with emotions. You really do. You have to have that practice of awareness. But I think what I would say is that when stress gets out of hand, when our resilience is threadbare, and many people, I think, right now might be feeling that way because this situation has gone on for so very long, it does affect our biochemistry. All of our hormones get thrown off. When cortisol is up, the insulin, the blood sugar balances goes off. Our sleep gets impacted. You can't sleep when cortisol is off. You can't sleep well. If you can't sleep well, you don't reset, you don't detoxify. I mean, it's literally a chain reaction of events that get set off with stress, with adversity. So just on the physical level, there's a huge impact. We also know that our hormones impact our emotions and vice versa. and vice versa. Our emotions in Chinese medicine, they believe the root cause is the emotions affecting then the manifestation physically, right? That we look at it the other way around. So, and then our mental outlook, every single one, there's a whole of these, the mental, the emotional, and the physical are absolutely, we call them interdependent, and one changes into the other. So if our hormones are off for physical reasons, let's say menopause, our hormones are off, it's going to have an effect and an expression emotionally. Vice versa, when we're younger and our hormones, let's say, are still full, but we are living in very high stress environment, we're going to throw our hormones off, mainly the adrenals and the thyroid, through living in a high emotional state of anxiety and stress. So they impact one another and then have a mental impact as well. So there's a field called psychoneuroendocrinology. If you can say that 3 times quickly, I will
Wow.
send you, 1,000 pounds. So it used to be psychoneuroimmunology, and then they added the endocrine, right in there. So it's a tongue twister, but it's basically the science and the field of studying how the mental state and the emotional state are linked and affecting and being impacted by the physical. But it's a back and forth. It's the research and the science is so exciting. There's a beautiful book called The Molecules of Emotion by Candace Perth. It's a few years old now. It's not a more recent one, but she's the first scientist to discover that the impact and the emotions and the biology. And it was a woman in a very male dominated field.
Yeah.
So for me, what's important about that, Stella, is okay, they're interrelated. They're not separate and distinct. However, in order to have an impact, there's 2 ways to start. It's all about habits. It's all about habits and creating new habits. But the most easily accessible for new habits is the physical. So you want to choose either what has the biggest impact on a physical level, which I'll get into, or where's my weak link, right? One or the other. As a practitioner, I'll usually go with both. I'll say these have the biggest impact. So how are you doing with your sleep? Absolutely huge for resilience. And how are you doing with your fitness? Also enormous. These are pillar practices for our physical, emotional, and mental health. The physical is easier to control when you're trying to create a new habit. It just is. And it has a ripple effect. It doesn't mean it's primary. It's only primary in that it's easier to impact and grab a hold of, right? Now, you meditate, right, Stella? I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, meditation has been my lifesaver over years
right.
and years. And people will always say, oh, you're so lucky I can't meditate. But it's just practice. It's just discipline, as far as I'm concerned, without sounding too harsh. But it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's beautiful that for you that was a portal, and that's
Yeah.
why I brought it up, because
Yeah.
having said what I just said, there are many, many, many people that would say, I think the main way to enter is through the mind and mindfulness and consciousness. As a practitioner, I run across a lot of people that you can sit and teach them again and again, and their nervous system is in no way able to practice a mindfulness practice. What they can do, they really cannot. They sit there and
Really
watch.
interesting.
I know, I know. But what works as the beautiful bridge, and I really do want to share it because I think it's really helpful to people. And I've through my life for 3 decades seen this, maybe longer. Yeah, longer. Oh my God. Oh my God. I
I
forget
know.
how old I am, especially after this year. It's like time is upside down.
Yeah, but you're timeless. You look amazing. You don't age.
Oh, honey, I've gained. Like,
It's okay. It's okay.
it's okay. I think this is part of my resilience is to be a bit more robust.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's a famine, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
Um,
too.
but what I wanted to say is the link when people want to practice mindfulness but are not yet able to, and really when you have cortisols going through the roof and your adrenals are shot and you're on fight or flight for decades, really, Stella, I've seen it. I've witnessed it. It's not been my journey, but I know it. Pranayama, breathing practices, amazing way to enter and start to calm the nervous system. Again, it sounds like I'm talking about stress, but resilience is about building the reserves physically, emotionally, and mentally. So you do want to eventually be able to do mindfulness practices, and until you can, breathing practices can set the nervous system into a neutral zone, or if even better, a parasympathetic dominant mode, which is the healing and digesting mode. And then you can begin to do better with mindfulness practices. And also you can start with very small amounts of breathing and small amounts of mindfulness. But when people say, well, where do I start? Where's your weak spot? If your mind, I have a sister then that I love and adore, and her mind is like a squirrel. She needs to start there. If she doesn't call the nervous system, the rest doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. So calming the nervous system is one way to get there. The point about fitness, tell us a bit more about that, because that's quite an interesting one.
Yes.
With regards to resilience, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in traditional Chinese medicine, movement is core, and everything sort of spins off from there, because to generate energy, we need to move. To cleanse and detoxify, we need to move. To be able to be calm and relaxed, we need to move to burn off some of that nervous energy. So movement is one of the pillars. But interestingly enough, the Western research also shows that changing our fitness habits, if that's the one where we start, the ripple effect is profound. We end up eating better. We end up sleeping better. We end up having more energy and therefore more constructive, productive, or positive, you can say, a more positive direction. So it seems to be a spiral that takes us from sort of a lower state of resilience and adaptability to a higher, where we can meet the world more. We can face and move forward with things in our life. So it's one of the pillars. It's a very strong one, and as is sleep. But I know you've had the thing, talks with sleep, but
it's good. It's just reinforcement. It's good to hear more and more of this, because as you say, you reset and then you build your resilience reserves, because you can never build resilience if you're exhausted all the time. Right?
Look,
it's just kind of common sense when you look at it that way. But I tell you the issue, and I know I can talk from personal experience. People soldier through feeling a certain way because you get used to how you feel. Yes. So and you think it's normal, you normalize it. So if you're exhausted, you get used to being exhausted, and then you think it's normal. Or if you're very stressed and you're tensed up all the time and your body's totally tense, again, I'm talking from personal experience, from this is going to the past, but you normalize that. And so how do you know this is a really weird question, but how do you know that that's not normal? And what are the signs to look for? Because again, I'll share a story. When I came to Kamalaya, I was, typical A-type personality, and I wanted to come and do a detox, and I was going to go to 5 classes a day, and I brought my piles of books to read. And I didn't do any of that because I was totally burnt out, and I had adrenal burnout, as you know, at the time. And but I didn't know that. I had no idea I had adrenal burnout. I was just carrying on as normal because I thought it was not how I was. It was just, and also culturally, we were kind of taught to soldier through, to just keep going, get through it, don't stop. So how do people know that without coming to Kamalaya? Of course, we want to get everyone to Kamalaya, but until they come to Kamalaya, how do they know that?
We do get symptoms. I'll talk about my journey as well. I mean, I had an extreme adrenal exhaustion in 2003 in the process of creating Kamalaya. So before we were open, but we had been working on it intensively, and it was like adrenal burnout, and I couldn't sleep. I was wired and tired but wired. Whichever way you want to look. I was exhausted, and I would sleep for 2 hours, and then my eyes would fly wide open, and I was wide awake because my cortisol levels were just sky high. So even though I was crawling with exhaustion, I couldn't sleep, for example. So your sleep can get really dysregulated. For some people, their food cravings get really thrown off. For me, I'm not a coffee drinker. And at that time when that happened, I was craving coffee because I couldn't sleep. So, I was up at 2 a.m, having gone to bed at 11. And so I had to use coffee, which I never had to do. I wanted alcohol. I wanted to like knock myself down, and I could see how that becomes part of the cycle, because at the end of the day, I didn't know how to wind down. I for about a month, I had 1 or 2 gin and tonics at the end of the evening, which I totally loved, and understood why the British loved it in the tropics, because it was so refreshing and delicious, and sort of, made me really, but I knew that wasn't a healthy solution. So, after a month of that, I stopped that, but I understood how the cycle can get going. And I eventually had to step out for 4 months to reset myself, because I almost had a head-on collision. So you can feel things like your sleep, your eating habits, you're craving sugar, you're craving stimulants, your moods. Your moods. If your moods are whether it's a lot of, some people go into crying and more depression. Some people become extremely anxious. Like it's one worry after another. I tend to go that way. So if I'm not worrying about this, I'm worrying about that. Then I worry about, and John has to go, hey, you're bouncing up, like you're getting really anxious. You need to quiet down. Some people get really irritable. Some people break into rashes. John broke into severe head to toe rashes from the stress of the past few months. Headaches. All of us know our bodies enough to know. But what I would say is also slow down so you can tune in. Like if you really don't think anything's going on, there's a part of me right now that could do that. There's a part of me right now, because I have a big battery pack, so I can switch it on and go. But my sleep isn't normal. It's not like it was back then, not by any stretch, but it's not normal. It's not what I know as my normal sleep. And I have digestive stuff going on. So I know for me that's not normal, right? But because I've had that burnout, I know what to do before it gets severe. But I would say slow down, just slow down, do a little bit less so you can tune in to yourself. And I would start always, check your sleep, quality of the sleep and length of the sleep, and then check movement. Because even 10 minutes a day of walking will make a huge impact. Particularly, I don't know what your lockdown situation is. I don't know if you can walk and look at nature, but if you can look at...
Yeah, we can.
Great. If you can combine movement with nature, which the British culture has that as part of the culture, it is so healthy to build resilience, because that nature perspective connects us to something much bigger than ourselves. It expands our view of things, including our own situation. Even for me, when I'm like really locked in what we're going through, the country still being locked down, I can go to the beach and it's wide open space and it's big, vast sky. And it reminds me that it puts things in a different perspective that can be really helpful. And I'm talking a lot, but I have one little more thing I want to say on that regard. But our social network, and I don't mean like lots and lots of people, but if we have 1 or 2 people that we feel we can really lean on, meaning share our deepest fears and our hopes and our struggles, we're social beings. And sometimes when we're not feeling resilient, I'm one of those people, I'll pull back. Everyone that knows me knows when I'm really feeling threadbare in my adaptability and my resilience and my resources, I pull way back. And that's not a healthy response. So I've had to force myself, and it's not with many because I don't have the energy to do it with a lot of people, but with 2 or 3 key people, and not all on John because our partners can't take all of it, but 2 or 3 people. Though we try to do it all with them, they cannot. But just having even just one,
Yeah, yeah.
someone we can
So I
really.
guess and I really want to thank you for showing your vulnerability and being so authentic and open about what you've been through, because a lot of people kind of gloss over that, and it's really important for everyone to understand that we all go through stuff. We've all, even the people who have the most training and the best experience, like Karina, have really been through that. So I want to thank you for that. But before we end, because I know we're coming to the end of where we are at the end of our hour, I just want to talk about Kamalaya and Thailand and what's going on there, because with my optimistic hat on, I'm hoping that, and from what I've heard, that people will be allowed back in by about October. But do we have any latest updates on that, or am I? Yeah.
So as of a few days ago, the current situation is that people who have had 2 vaccines can come into the country as of April 1st, and only do 1 week quarantine. They still require quarantine, but 1 week as opposed to 15 days. And if you haven't had any vaccinations, you can come in the country with a 10-day quarantine. So that's like as of right now. But of course, I understand not everyone wants to do a quarantine, et cetera, et cetera. But that's right now. July 1st, they're doing a pilot with Phuket, and they're going to allow people into Phuket without any quarantine if you've had both vaccinations, and that will be a pilot. It's called Sandbox because it's contained. They feel that if something goes wrong, they can quickly contain it. But shortly after Phuket will be Samui. So they've announced officially it's in October, but similar to the UK, you're opening 17th of May for international travel, whereas international travel, yes?
Yes, but we don't know where we can go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know yet. You don't know yet.
We
Well,
know that we know we're not breaking the law if we leave on the
right,
17th of May, but we
right,
don't know where we can go. Yeah.
right. So yes, so similarly for us, I think it'll be sooner than October, but it's not yet official when.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's good. So if people come to Kamalaya for resilience, to build their resilience reserves, I love that term, by the way, to build your resilience reserves. I think it's wonderful. What will they be doing at Kamalaya to help them make
Yeah.
that happen?
So we have a few wellness programs that really are geared to support this. It just depends which angle someone would like to begin with. We have a beautiful sleep enhancement program, which is a standalone, as well as it can be used as an adjunct to another program. So it's self-explanatory. There's also, we have a beautiful embracing change. And that program works on our inner reserves, the emotional habits, the mental habits, and understanding ourselves and directing ourselves to better choices, to better habits. It's a very powerful program, and it's really working with yourself. And we also have an enriched gut program, which addresses through the digestive system our mental, our brain health, and the impact it has also on our moods and our emotions. And then our most recent program is called Immunity and Resilience, which is again through the immune system and the gut building the immune system, and then the impact on our mental resilience as well as our immune resilience. They're each of them really beautiful. They have a different focus, a different entry point. And Stella, your team at Wellbeing Escapes are wonderful at explaining, the different treatments and how they're different. So the details, I would suggest people can look.
Oh no, you've frozen again. Oh my God.
Their color and
Oh, you're back again. Sorry, again, we got to the details and then you froze again.
Oh, sorry.
You always freeze at those.
These
Hanging
little
on for
moments.
your words, yeah.
Well, the details of each of these programs can be learned, or you can learn more about them through Wellbeing Escapes and the team who are well versed in the nuances and the variations on the program.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, we've worked with Kamalaya from the beginning, so we know it very well, and happy to give you advice on the right programs. And we also consult with the team at Kamalaya and Karina, and Karina. Just to say, Karina is still behind building those programs. She manages it really tightly. I know nothing gets approved at Kamalaya unless Karina approves it. You know, nothing happens unless Karina approves it. So, and with all your love and care and kindness and real integrity that goes into that. So, thank you so much. The hours, as someone said it, the hours gone by really quickly, and I wish we could continue. Maybe we will continue another day. We'll come back and have another chat. It's so lovely to.
I would love. Okay, I would like to leave you all with one little message, but because every single one of us has truly infinite resources and potential that we mostly are unaware of and don't know how to tap. And it doesn't matter the genetics, it doesn't matter the backdrop, that potential is really with us and lives with us. And I really want to leave you with that, like that question about, is it something that you just are born with or not? I really want to stress, it doesn't really matter. Each of us can learn it and grow it from whatever level we're at and make it fuller, make it stronger, make it more robust so that it's more accessible and available for ourselves and to reach out to others, because ultimately I think that's where we get the biggest meaning and life satisfaction and true happiness, is the reaching out and bringing others with us. So I just want to leave you with it. And this time, sometimes it just feels like, oh my gosh, really again? I mean, I'm sure Europe has felt that. We're feeling that, it's like not still. But if we take this opportunity, we might come out of this unrecognizable to everyone, including ourselves, in a very good way. So I leave you with that.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. Yes, such a profound session, and your wisdom and love and integrity. It's so beautiful. There are some notes here about doing a group trip to Kamalaya. Who knows? Maybe we'll do that in the future. Maybe we'll look at that for next year. We can do a Wellbeing at Home community group trip to Kamalaya. Amazing.
Stella, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep talking with the group here and see if people are up for that, because it would be amazing. And,
we'll be waiting with open arms.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. And I wanted to just remind everybody, please, if you can just take a minute, go onto the site, and under the event, there's a button that says leave a review for this. Please do that. It really only takes a few minutes, and it just really helps us. It helps Karina, it helps Kamalaya. It would be very useful for us to have those reviews. And thank you all. Have a beautiful week ahead.